besties, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel, and also welcome to the last and final day of the 13 nights of Saraween. And you might be saying to yourself, Sarah, it's literally November. And to that I say, Halloween is not over until I say it's over. But in all seriousness, I got a little behind on Saraween because I had a tension headache for like 4 days. And so unfortunately, I had to post some videos late. Also, I'm in front of a green screen. Isn't that exciting? I read the Five Nights at Freddy's book so that I could fit in with Gen Z. If you're a millennial like me, you might be wondering what Five Nights at Freddy's is. So Five Nights at Freddy's started as a video game series created by a man named Scott Cawthorn in 2014. And it's a series of horror games where there are these like evil animatronics that jump out at you. It's a lot of jump scares. So this video is going to be a deep dive into the first 3 Five Nights at Freddy's books. Just so you know, there's like 24, I think, but the first 3 are a complete trilogy, and then the rest of them are a bunch of like novella and short story collections about different animatronics. I don't have a full understanding of the rest of the books. I just know about the first 3 that I'm about to tell you about. And from what I know, the lore in the books does not match the lore in the games, and the lore in the games does not match the movie. For some reason, Scott Cawthorn said, I'm gonna make everything different, but similar at the same time. I obviously could not do this video without at least trying one of the games myself. And so I did indeed stream myself playing Five Nights at Freddy's Sister Location on my Patreon. If you're interested in seeing that full stream, I've also posted a highlight video with all the best little bits. So if you're interested in seeing that as well as a bunch of other exclusive content, head on over to my Patreon and become a member. So the first book is called The Silver Eyes. Our main character is a girl named Charlie, and she is the daughter of the guy who was the owner of Freddy's Fazbear Pizzeria. He was also the engineer that created all of the animatronics that were at this restaurant. And so to paint a picture, this used to be a happening pizza place in the town of Hurricane, Utah. And so kids would go there and interact with the animatronics, have some pizza, and have a great time. It basically was Chuck E. Cheese. Charlie is returning home to her hometown of Hurricane 10 years after her friend Michael disappeared. We soon find out that she has a few childhood friends that she still remembers fondly from that time. Marla, Jessica, Lamar, Carlton, and John. All of them are coming to town for the memorial dedication to Michael. Charlie's first stop is to her childhood home because she's been raised by her Aunt Jen for the last decade because something mysterious has happened to her father that we don't know about yet. Miss Charlie goes into her childhood bedroom and sees all the animatronics that her dad made for her as a kid. There's a purple rabbit named Theodore, a unicorn named Stanley, and a child-sized doll named Ella. She turns a wheel and the animatronics come to life. And honestly, I thought this part was creepy, but nothing ends up happening. I really thought we were about to have a really creepy moment because I kind of went into these books thinking they were gonna be like nonstop horror, but that's really not what they are. I think I assumed that because the games are so many jump scares, so I thought that the book would be similar, but I'm just letting you know right now before we get into all the summary, it's not like that. Eventually, Charlie goes and meets up with her friends at a restaurant, and we soon discover that John has always been Charlie's childhood crush because we can't go into any young adult story without a forced romance. We also find out that Carlton is the only one in the friend group that still lives in Hurricane. So they ask him what happened to Freddy's after all the kids went missing. And Carlton says that the town built over it. They find out that a mall was built over it, but that it was abandoned for some reason. The group breaks in and they discover that there is a security guard, so they have to hide. And then for some reason, like I mentioned, Freddy's building is preserved in the center of the mall and they're able to get inside. I genuinely could not picture the way that this was working because I was like, what do you mean you preserved a building in a building? Like, it's giving Inception. I don't really understand. When they go inside, the restaurant is as it used to be. It's very preserved, like all of the tablecloths, all of the, arcade games, like everything is still there. After some exploring, they all leave. And it's a very lackluster scene because again, I thought something creepy was gonna happen, but it did not. The next day, a couple more people from the friend group arrive and they inform them that they went to Freddy's the night before, and the new people want to go again after Michael's memorial. This part made no sense to me narrative-wise and pacing-wise because I was like, why would you have us go to Freddy's the day before just to have us go again a second time? Like, I don't really understand why they didn't just have the whole friend group go the first time, because I feel like we could have skipped some extra pages. Another repetitive thing that happens is that Charlie goes back to her childhood home with John. At this point, I really believe the authors were being paid by the word because why are we having so many repetitive scenes? While they're at Charlie's house, John tells her that he saw who took Michael all those years ago. John says that he saw what he thought was a bear, but not Freddy. The group decides to try to turn the animatronics back on, and then Charlie and John play hide and seek, and she ends up getting cut by one of the animatronics when she trips and falls. This is when the group leaves Freddy's yet again, and nothing really happens besides Charlie cutting her arm. The next day, Charlie confides in John that Freddy's actually was not her father's first restaurant. When she was really little, Michael, he had a diner that had its own mascots, a bear and a rabbit. Apparently, the way that these mascots work was that they could either be an animatronic robot, or you could use spring locks to push back the robotics, and a person could get inside the suit as well. Charlie realizes that she has a repressed memory. She used to have a twin brother, and something happened to him, but Charlie can't remember. Charlie and John decide to go looking for her dad's first restaurant, except she can't remember the name, where it was, or anything about it except for that it had a checkered floor. That sounds like a lot of diners. And yet somehow, with little to no information, they do indeed find the old dilapidated restaurant. They see that it was originally called Fredbear's Family Diner, and going back jogs Charlie's memory, and she realizes that a yellow bear took her brother, which is the same one that took Michael. They rejoin the group and they go back to Freddy's for a third time. This time, they're intercepted by a creepy security guard named Jason. Instead of arresting them or kicking them out, Jason agrees to let them go inside Freddy's if he can go too. Inside Freddy's, Dave goes with them to the control room and clicks a few buttons, like beep, beep, boop, boop, and everything starts moving again. And they're kind of like, interesting, suspicious, like why do you know how to do that? As the reader, we soon find out that Jason has ulterior motives, because when the kids aren't looking, he goes to a back room, and inside the room, he touches a fursuit that has yellow fur. Then the group decides to leave again for some godforsaken reason. On their way out, we realize that Carlton is missing, and the only person who saw this happen is Jason, Marla's younger brother. He saw Bonnie take Carlton, but no one believes him. The group decides they need to go get Carlton's dad because he's a cop. We then find out that Clay was actually the detective on the case back when all the kids went missing. Clay says he's always known who it was, and they arrested him, but since there was no bodies found of the children, the person could not be charged. Then they all decide to spend the night at Carlton's, even though he's still missing, and they just like have a slumber party together. We then find out through a conversation between Charlie and John that when the kids went missing, everyone thought that Charlie's dad did it. And we also find out that her dad killed himself after Michael went missing. Then Charlie and John go back to her house for a third fucking time. They go through her father's things for clues, and they find a photo of him at Fredbear's diner wearing a yellow bear suit with a rabbit next to him, and they wonder who would have been inside this other suit. We are then flashed over to a scene of Carlton waking up after being kidnapped. He's wedged inside the body of a mascot costume with his arms pinned in, and he tries to get out, but a voice tells him to stop. I realize now that I was accidentally calling the security guard Jason, and I meant to call him Dave. But I said Jason multiple times. And so hopefully my little PowerPoint corrected me on that. But just so you know, I know that I meant to say Dave, but I said Jason, and Jason is actually Marla's little brother. So Dave, not Jason, the security guard, steps out of the shadows, and he is wearing the yellow fursuit. I don't know if I should be calling them fursuits. I don't think they're actually fursuits, but you know what I mean. The animatronic suit. He tells Carlton that the costume he's wearing is both one that people can wear, but also one where if you let go of the spring locks, the robot body will snap into place, like I was mentioning earlier. And then if that happens while you're wearing it, it will be a death trap. It genuinely was giving Saw vibes. We find out that the reason Dave knows all of this is because it happened to him back in the day, and he reveals by taking off a shirt that he's covered in scars. We flash back to the group, and they're trying to get into Freddy's again, but this time it's boarded up. They manage to get inside, and they go to the control room and see on the security camera that Dave is lurking about, and they can see where Carlton is. Charlie goes to Carlton, and when she realizes he's in the suit, she knows how to get him out. Carlton tells her that Dave took all the kids back in the day and he put them into the animatronic suits. So all those missing kids, Dave took them and he killed them by putting them in the animatronic suits. I don't know why he would do that or what his motivation was, but the whole series hinges on that. They're able to overcome Dave and tie him up, and they ask him questions, and he admits to being Charlie's dad's business partner and that he took the kids, but he refers to it as love. He then tells them that when it gets dark, the children's spirits will rise and take control of the animatronic suits. So there we have the lore of why the animatronic suits pop up at night. I don't know if that is true for the video games, but that is true for this book series. Clay shows up and they decide it's time to go, but Charlie gets captured by Dave in the rabbit suit. She's able to spring the locks in his little rabbit suit, and he gets stabbed all the way through with the robot parts, and then they leave, and that's the end of the story. And you would think, oh, but Sarah, the story was just heating up. Doesn't it feel like there should be more to it? There isn't. So do I think this book was good? No, I do not. But I moved on to the next one anyway. All right, book 2 is called The Twisted Ones. We open a year later with Charlie attending St. George College. She's studying engineering and robotics because she wants to be just like her dad. The whole story is being propelled by this idea that her twin brother's ghost is being held captive and she can't get to him. She's been having a lot of dreams about this, and she just knows that her brother Sammy is looking for her. I don't know if I mentioned in the last summary that his name was Sammy. Her romance with John has been forgotten and they haven't spoken since last year, but today they're going to be meeting up. When she sees him, she finds out that he's been living in Hurricane working construction because he couldn't afford college. We then find out that a storm hit Hurricane and damaged a lot of buildings. No wonder they call it Hurricane. This includes Charlie's childhood home, which she didn't realize because she couldn't manage to get herself to go back to Hurricane ever since what happened last year. John asks Charlie on a date for that night and she says yes. It's a very awkward scene because it feels like Charlie doesn't even like John, but he's really desperate. He loves Charlie, so they agree to go on a date. Their meeting is interrupted by Clay, the cop from the first book, and he tells Charlie he needs her to see something. For some odd reason, Clay takes her to an active murder scene, which honestly makes no sense because she is a civilian. A man's body was found in a field and his wounds are very similar to the wounds of someone who would have gotten caught in one of those animatronic suits, like if the spring locks were released. Clay tells her that the town had actually started tearing Freddy's down, but then the storm hit and they stopped. He also tells her that they never found Dave's body, even though they saw him die. John and Charlie go on their date, and it's a super boring scene that I'm not even really going to describe beyond that they go to the movie theater. We also find out that Charlie has been working on her own animatronics and using a machine trying to learn how to teach them how to speak. I feel like this could have repercussions based on what we know about these animatronic suits. We also discover that Charlie is now roommates with Jessica at the college, and they go together to the old mall to see if Freddy's is still there. They find out that Freddy's is now a pile of debris, but they find a spot where it looks like someone crawled out of the debris, and then they find a yellow rabbit costume locked in a closet. When they open the closet, they see a dead body in it, and they're pretty sure it's Dave. And for some reason, they do not call the police, and they just leave. Charlie goes back to class, and there is this classmate who has a crush on her named Artie, and he asks her to study with him. And then Charlie discovers when she's helping him study that all of her notes have these really harsh rectangles drawn on them. Like she kept drawing and drawing and drawing until it like made holes in the paper. This freaks Charlie out, and so she leaves abruptly and decides she needs to go to her childhood home. On her way, she sees vultures circling over a field. So of course she goes to check it out, because when I see vultures circling, I definitely get out of my car to figure out what it is. She randomly discovers a dead body with wounds similar to the first body. Seems like we've got some repeat murders going on. She calls Clay and he meets her there, and then they notice that the woman looks very similar to Charlie. After checking her wallet, they realize that she lived nearby, and so Charlie gets Clay to let her go to the woman's house to look for clues. Again, I do not understand why this police officer is including a random civilian in the investigations. When she gets there, she can't find anything until she goes in the backyard and she finds 3 shallow holes. They all look like something crawled out of them. After rolling around in the dirt, Charlie realizes she's 2 hours late for her date with John, so she rushes to the restaurant and he's still there waiting for her because he can't take a hint that she does not like him. She cuts the date short and she asks John to go with her to her childhood home because she didn't end up getting there because she got stopped by the dead body. They go outside to her dad's workspace and she finds another grave. Buried in there is an animatronic that comes to life and grabs her, but then John ends up ripping its head off and protecting her. And there is a ringing noise that makes John feel really sick. And they realize that the switch that is like making this ringing noise basically makes it seem like the animatronic is alive. Like when it was lunging at Charlie, it had some like weird undulations happening to it. I'm gonna be upfront, I'm not fully understanding what exactly it was doing, but it makes the robot look like something that it isn't. I don't think that makes sense, but honestly, you really have to suspend a lot of belief and just general grasp of science to read these books. So I will not be explaining it any further. They realize that this freaky animatronic was probably made by Dave, who, by the way, is actually not named Dave. His name is William Afton, and I don't know why I didn't mention that in the first summary, but her dad's business partner was William Afton, and he was masquerading as Dave, the security guard. They realized that when the storm broke the wall at Charlie's house, like it destroyed part of her house, it released these weird animatronics, and they've been out in the wild looking for Charlie specifically, and that's why they killed the woman that looks like Charlie. They also, for some reason, are able to discern that the graves, or like the long holes that she found in the ground, are there because at night the animatronics buried themselves, and so they only hunt during the night for Charlie, and during the day they're sleeping in these holes. I don't know why, but for some reason they were able to really just jump to that conclusion and know that, but it's not super clear to me on why they have to do that. Like, why can they only come at night? I do not know. Through another series of confusing clues that only make sense to the characters, they're able to find an evil Freddy buried in an abandoned lot. So they call Clay and ask him to come meet them. And instead of destroying the animatronics that are buried, they fall asleep in the car and wait for night. I generally don't understand why you wouldn't just dig them up and destroy them. Like, they're literally hunks of metal. You could just like burn them or something. But for some reason, they don't do that. They hear someone screaming in the distance and they run looking for that person, and they find a woman crumpled on the ground. Charlie decides to be a sacrificial lamb, and she goes to this abandoned show house. Like, she goes to like this random neighborhood, and there's all these like display homes. And so she goes to sleep in one of them and waits for one of the animatronics to come and take her. She does indeed get taken by one of them, and they put her inside the Freddy suit. And I genuinely do not understand why she gave herself up so easily. This is not explained beyond the fact that she wants to get closer to her brother's spirit or something like that. When Charlie eventually wakes up, she finds herself in a replica of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. The place is filled with very creepy, scary animatronics. John, Jessica, and Clay eventually show up to try and rescue her. Again, I do not know how everyone just knows where to go in this story. They are then greeted by William Afton, but he is now warped by the yellow bunny suit he was wearing when they crushed him. He tells them that his name is now Springtrap, and that he has become this creature because his body melded with the suit. They all run away again, and Charlie gets separated from the group, and she ends up running into a cave that's attached to the building. I don't really know why there's a cave attached to the building, but there is. She gets caught by Springtrap, and she asks him, why did he take Sammy all those years ago? And he seems confused and tells her, I didn't take Sammy, I took you. The whole building starts to come down around them, but Charlie is still trying to get to the place where she thinks her brother is, but John convinces her to come with him, and he tells her that he loves her. I literally do not understand why he is in love with her, because she has ignored him and been late to every date that they've had. The evil Freddy grabs Charlie and pulls her into its chasm, and John is still clasping her hand, trying to pull her out. They fight the evil Freddy, and the plates close around Charlie, creating so much blood that they think she's dead. And so Jessica, Clay, and John are forced to leave as everything is coming down around them. And when we flash forward to a restaurant in the future, they're talking about how Charlie died. Charlie shows up in a red dress and combat boots. That outfit was very specifically described to us. And John says, that's not Charlie. End of the book. Did I like this one? Also, no. It was not good. It was hard to get through, actually. Also, tell me why at the end of both books, when they square off with William Afton, he just like dies so easily. The final book is called The Fourth Closet. This book opens with John being our main character, because we are led to believe that Charlie died in the last book, even though mysteriously she showed up at the end. The only thing of Charlie that John has left is her robot rabbit Theodore, which is now just a decapitated head. We also find out that there is a new restaurant opening in town with a lot of clowns and what seems to be animatronics. And for some reason, literally none of the main characters acknowledge that this is weird and creepy and suspicious. Jessica shows up at John's apartment, and he invites him to go to Clay's house. John decides that he will go to Clay's because Carlton is in town. If you don't remember, Carlton is technically Clay's son, but for some reason he was not in the last book, but Clay was. When Charlie shows up, she tries to get John to talk to her, and he asks her if she remembers the last thing he said to her while she was in the suit, and she tells him that she can't remember anything because of the trauma. For those of you who've forgotten, the last thing he said was, I love you. John gets upset and he doesn't really want to talk to Charlie, but then she asks him if they can meet tomorrow at the Italian restaurant where they had their first date. And I don't know if it technically counts as having dates there, because Miss Charlie kept standing him up and showing up late. John decides to go on the date with Charlie, and he basically tells her that he doesn't believe she's the real Charlie, which is an interesting tactic, because if you think someone is like an evil twin, I don't know why you would say to their face. On his way home after the date, John stops by at Clay's house, and he tells him that Charlie asked him where Aunt Jen was, but he of course said, I don't know. We then find out that 2 more kids are missing, and Clay's working the case, but he doesn't have any leads. I just want to reiterate that no one is thinking that maybe the new Freaky Clown restaurant could be a place to look. No one thinks that that's a red flag. Even if there wasn't evil animatronics afoot, I definitely would think a restaurant full of clowns would be sketch. Apparently, none of them have read It by Stephen King. When John leaves Clay's house, he sees this mechanical clown woman gliding by in a very eerie way, and he convinces himself it's just someone in a costume. These people are really bad at figuring things out. When John gets home, Theodore the rabbit, like the little hen, starts making some really weird noises, and he keeps saying shining star, silver reef over and over again. John rushes back to Clay's house because for some reason he thinks this is a clue to go back and check on Clay, and so he rushes back and he finds him almost dead on the floor. Clay goes to the hospital and Jessica meets them there. Clay rouses to give them an envelope full of photos, and he mysteriously tells them there's a maximum range for it, and then he falls asleep. They see that the photos are a bunch of blurry pictures of Charlie around town. John and Jessica go looking for Aunt Jen when they realize that Shining Reef is a ghost town that she is hiding in. Everyone in the series is simultaneously so bad at knowing what's going on, but also so good at guessing where to go next. Aunt Jen lets them inside and they ask her to explain what's going on, but Jen tells them to hide when there is a knock at the door. They hear that it's Charlie at the door, but they stay in hiding, and John stumbles upon some wooden trunks. He opens one for some reason and conveniently finds the real Charlie sleeping comatose inside one of the trunks. They realize the other Charlie is a fake, and they escape as the fake Charlie imposter kills Aunt Jen. Aunt Jen was on page for like 4 pages and she died very quickly. Jessica and John study the photos that Clay had of Charlie, and they realize that she's blurry because it's an illusion, and she's actually an animatronic using William Afton's poorly explained mirage technology from the last book. Fake Charlie and John meet up at the Italian restaurant again, and John at first tries to play it cool, but then he just full on admits that he has the real Charlie and knows she's a fake. Again, I do not understand John's conduct with this random fake Charlie, because he keeps just like telling her what he's doing. He's like, yeah, I have the real Charlie, I know you're a fake. And I'm just like, how is this gonna help you, especially when fake Charlie just killed Aunt Jen? Like, use your brain, please. Fake Charlie leaves the restaurant and Jessica has this bright idea to stow away in her trunk. Jessica, of course, gets caught by the fake Charlie and gets tied up at that freaky deaky clown restaurant that no one thought was a red flag. We then discover that fake Charlie is the clown animatronic girl, and she has a lot of Charlie's memories. William Afton then comes out of the shadows, and he's in even worse condition than we saw him last time, and for some reason he's no longer calling himself Springtrap. Apparently he was just Springtrap for like a couple chapters. He's missing parts of his body and he's in a wheelchair, and he reveals to Jessica that he has been experimenting with melding his body with another suit, and he has the clown girl remove his organs and put them into this new suit. Like I've been saying, the science here is very dicey and hard to understand and not very well explained. The suit is described as being sort of a melted and warped hunk of metal, like it's an exoskeleton. I don't really know. John is back at his apartment with Charlie, and she randomly wakes up and they come up with a plan to retrieve some of Charlie's old experiments because she has a chip that could possibly make them invisible to the animatronics. So apparently the science experiments that she was doing last year when she was at school have like the little switch in them, and they're like, if we go get the chip and put it in like an earpiece, then we can be invisible. Again, please do not make me try to explain the science because I don't know. For some reason, they send Carlton to go get the stuff at Jessica's apartment, even though Carlton has been nothing short of an idiot the entire time he's been on page. But they send him to Jessica's apartment because that's where she's keeping Charlie's old experiments. And so he goes in and the clown girl shows up and she corners him, but at the last minute he uses the chip thing that we're talking about and puts it in his ear, and he becomes invisible to the clown girl. Then we go back to Jessica, who's already been kidnapped, and she wakes up in a small room and discovers all the missing children who say they were captured by the clown girl. She and the children start to escape, and they are pursued by a bunch of evil animatronics, and Jessica has to crawl through this like tube thing, and she tries to get away. She's cornered by a fox, but she's able to put the earpiece in at the last second, and it makes her invisible to the animatronics. Meanwhile, Charlie and John are with the fake Charlie. Charlie asks her what she is, and the clown girl says, no, the question is, what are you? Our gears are turning. We're wondering what is going on. Then she tells Charlie to call her Elizabeth, so we'll be referring to her as Elizabeth for the rest of this. Elizabeth encourages Charlie to start remembering things, and this is where it gets kind of weird, because the big reveal is that Charlie herself has been an animatronic this whole time. She starts piecing things together in her brain, and she realizes that her dad built a bunch of different Charlies so that they could like grow up over time, because the original Charlie was the one that was kidnapped. Elizabeth tells our Charlie that she's not the real Charlie either, and reaches inside Charlie's torso and pulls out a doll and says, "This is you." Elizabeth attacks Charlie, and then Charlie uses a knife contraption to stab both of them. And then she says, "I was never supposed to be here. Neither of us were." Carlton finds William Afton's lab and realizes that Michael's soul is inside that weird contraption thing that he's been building. The weird creature gets up from the table and it sets William on fire, because again, every single scene with the villain lasts for like a page because they just always defeat him really easily. And then the book ends with John visiting the graveyard where Henry is buried, and he sees Charlie standing in the distance under a tree, and she beckons him. And as he walks away, we pan down to the gravestone and it says Charlotte Emily, 1980 to 1983. So she was not human the whole time, and the real Charlie died, and we have no closure about the ghost of Sammy or if Sammy was real. There's one line when there's like letters or memories between Aunt Jen and Henry where she tells him like, you can go live with your wife and your son. So I think the implication is that Charlie was kidnapped when she was little, but Sammy survived. And so her mom divorced Henry and like took off with Sammy. And then Henry was like so upset about the fact that Charlie died that he started doing these mad experiments where he like built robot Charlies. And our main character was a robot the entire time. Was this book good? That is the question I keep asking after each one of these. And I actually have to say that this one was way more interesting than the others. I don't know what it was about the pacing or the way that the story was being told, but I was definitely more intrigued by this one, and I gotta give it to them. This one felt more like a thriller. It was still convoluted. As I was reading my notes to you, I was like, a lot of people are gonna be like, what is going on? And that's fair. That is really fair. That is how I felt. And if you've read these books before and you're better at paying attention to details than I, maybe you can explain it to everyone in the comments, because I simply don't know. And I feel like this is the kind of thing where I should probably go on Reddit and look up what like fans are saying, but I simply don't care. I just randomly got it in my head that I really wanted to read this book series for no reason. Like literally no one told me to do this challenge. I actually originally intended to read all 24 books, but then I realized very early on that that was crazy, especially because the trilogy was hard enough to get through. Like I was really struggling. So I had to cap it at these three. And it is kind of a contained story in those three. And I feel like all of the novellas and short stories that come after are just like little vignettes about like the FNAF world, if you will. But that kind of brings me to the end of this reading experiment. I hope that you enjoyed it. I can't say that I live, laugh, loved these books. They were interesting to say the least. I will say that I actually really did enjoy playing the video game, and so if you want to see that playthrough, I highly recommend watching it, because me and my patrons had a ton of fun while I was playing that. A couple of them have played the FNAF games before, and so they were kind of able to help me, because I'm not the best video game gamer, if you will. I don't know why I said video game player, but anyway, I'm not the best gamer, but I really enjoyed the game, and I actually plan on doing a part 2 because I only made it to night 4 and I could not beat night 4, because if you've ever seen Sister Location, like if you know that game, night 4 is so fucking hard. So I'm actually going to do a part 2 with my patrons where I play again, and it kind of got me on a streaming kick, because I actually think I might stream some other games for Patreon as well. Like I was thinking about streaming Baldur's Gate. I think that would be really fun. I know Baldur's Gate takes like a million hours to play, but I thought it might be fun to play for a few hours with my patrons. But yeah, if you've made it to the end of this video and you enjoyed it, if you liked this wild kooky ride, then feel free to use the pizza emoji in honor of Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria. And also let me know if there's any other random ass book series that you want me to pick up. I thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.